Wishes well doing, and welcome to After They Found Atlantis. This is my first video on this channel. I'm trying to start this channel so we could find out where Atlantis is and find out more clues. If we can add to the collection of clues out there that can maybe lead us to more information about Atlantis and might help us discover it somewhere, if it actually did exist. My name is Neil. I've had a great fascination with Atlantis for a long time. I've been studying it for 20 years and off and on, and I thought I should get back on there and get my information out on the World Wide Web that I have and my opinions. And I'm hoping that you guys could help me too. We can work together and maybe come up with some new viewpoints. So let's get started. The Ancestors of Solon of the Hellenes. Next slide, please. Solon. Here he is, guys. Born in 640 BC. Solon is a great lawgiver in Greece, in Athens. And he's the one that brought back the story of Atlantis from Egypt. And here he has got a quote about laws. It's like, society is well governed when its people obey the magistrates and the magistrates obey the law. So he was very, very wise. I think it's a wise statement there. But without Solon, we wouldn't have Atlantis. The Atlantis, that we know. And I think that he gets passed over a lot of the times. People kind of like talk about him for a second and then they move onwards. He's like a side note, really, but he's the main reason why we have Atlantis. So this is why I want to dive into him and his life. But first I want to go over Solon's ancestors and the people leading up to his world when he came into the world. So this next slide, please. And this is his world and his ancestors' world. And at the time, I want to go back to 1600 BC. This is 1,000 years before Solon's time, because I believe that the Minoans were basically Solon's ancestors and the Mycenaeans. And they were the ones that probably would have had the knowledge of Atlantis and their history. Because they won the war. The prehistoric Athenians and their ancestors, going back to 10,000 years from our time, but 8,000 years before Solon's time, those are the ones that won the war. They beat the Atlanteans coming into their area. And so they would have had the knowledge of that, but somehow that got lost. And I think there's many factors of probably how it got lost, but towards the end, the two final knockout blows, I think, as far as losing the information, was there's a volcanic eruption in the center of the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. And Solon's ancestors were hammered by Thera, a massive volcanic eruption. Some say the largest ever witnessed by man. And Thera is a supervolcano, so it just completely devastated the area. Next slide, please. Thera's huge caldera up in the left-hand corner there, and it's giant, and you could see that it's in the lower right-hand corner. That's the island. It's the same shape. It's today's Santorini, but it's a major volcanic eruption. Okay, and it I think devastated the area, devastated all these seafaring peoples, because that's the way the Minoans ancestors, going back, Solon's ancestors all the way back to the ancient Greeks, beat the Atlanteans coming into their area, because they had a superior navy to them. Obviously, they had to beat them because the Atlanteans were known, they came from an island, so yeah, they have boats, and they were a naval power. So, but the Minoans at this time in 1600 BC were annihilated by this explosion, this tsunamis. It was devastating to them. I believe. Some other people, scholars out there, believe it wasn't so bad, But I think it was a major crushing blow. Next slide, please. Thera wipes out the Bronze Age peoples, the equivalent to dropping 40 atomic bombs. Tsunami City, the earthquakes, the pyroclastic cloud. So Thera lies within 200 nautical miles of Athens, and about 40 miles, I think, or so from Crete, the island of Crete, which is south. Athens is north of Thera. So could you imagine going 200 miles out from wherever you live and then dropping 40 atomic bombs right there in that spot, and then go back to your place where you live and tell me that you're not affected by that? Well, how would that affect you? And this is why I'm saying this is a major event. The tsunami was just, you have to, because the islands and islands, so those tsunamis are like, they were coming out like you threw a rock in a pond. All those waves are coming out and dispersing, just like Sumatra in 2005, when the devastation, the 2005 tsunami showed us how powerful those tsunamis could be. And there's also, at the same time, earthquakes. Also, excuse me. Next slide, please. The peoples were highly advanced seafaring cultures nearby. And there's, some of the evidence of their high technology. The pillars, the 4-story buildings. This is on Crete right here. And you can see that there's a volcano back in the background. They're getting out of town because they probably had an idea that this was coming, but it's probably didn't stop the effect of them just losing a lot of their, culture. Next slide, please. And this is the city on Crete. It's called Knossos or Knossos, and this is to show you how advanced their society was and their culture was at the time. This is also where Minos is from, King Minos, and this is also where they get the idea of the Minotaur was living here, because there's a Greek myth about the Minotaur living in a maze on Crete. So this is how we call them now, Minoans, okay? And this is where Zeus was born, on Crete, on the island of Crete, and there's a cave there where he came to the world, supposedly. So this is what I like about, I've always thought was really cool about Greek mythology, is that Greek mythology is the science of explanation. They're trying to put a story or around a thing that actually exists, basically probably to help you remember it. And who knows, it might have been actually where it did happen. So then there's always an explanation behind it. This is why I think Atlantis actually did exist, because it's part of the mythology. Next slide, please. And here's an upper shot of the satellite photo of Knossos, where the Minotaur, in this area, he may have lived in a maze, and then they were sacrificing. The Athenians happened to come down here, and they had to find a way out by using a ball of string. This is like the myth, and we'll talk about that myth later on, as there's a lot of interesting things about that. And next slide, please. And here's another shot of Knossos or Knossos, and this area was probably just devastated during that time, during that cataclysmic event. Next slide, please. The advanced culture on Crete ends, and you can see that there's some stairs there. There's the indoor plumbing, the artwork, and there's I think many clues in this area too about Atlantis. Some people actually think this is Atlantis. So, but we're going to talk about that when we start discussing all the theories about where Atlantis is or was. So I'm going to leave all options open. But I definitely have my own opinion, but we'll save that for later. Next slide, please. Thera was a VEI7 volcanic index, 7 on the scale, and you can see here all these volcanoes around the world and through time. And so, compared to Krakatoa, Thera was 4 or 5 times more powerful than the legendary 1883 eruption of Krakatoa. This is going to give us an idea, which blew with the force of a 600 kiloton atomic bomb, sending 1 cubic mile of rock into the sky. The sound could be heard from hundreds of miles away. Plumes rose up 17 miles in the air. This caused sunsets to be red all over the world. For a year afterward, an estimated 30,000 people died in the subsequent earthquakes and tidal waves of Krakatoa. Now it's Krakatoa, and the Krakatoa is in Sumatra in 1883, and we have we're remembering this volcanic eruption because it was in modern times basically. But could you imagine 4 or 5 times more powerful was Thera? And then down at the bottom we have, I put the yellow arrow. That's where Yellowstone is sitting, and it's a supervolcano as well, and even more powerful. So what I wanted to say now is that, next slide please. And there's Yellowstone, located in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and it's the people in the United States are living on a supervolcano. There's just a matter of time before this one goes up, and so basically we're living in the windows between cataclysms on Earth. There's all kinds of threats. We got volcanoes, we have asteroids, earthquakes, sun flares, everything you can think of. That has hurt us in our past. It caused extinctions, and so we should be enjoying this window, in my opinion, of good weather. Those are bad weather events. So when you have a good weather time before the storm hits, we should be enjoying life and not trying to kill each other, which we seem to always want to do. And then it's only when something bad happens that we all come together. I just wish we could come together before something bad happens and make a lot of progress that way, and maybe prepare for something like this. Next slide, please. And there's the caldera of Yellowstone. And next slide, please. This is another shot of just waiting on the eruption. Old Faithful's in there somehow, just spitting up a little bit of that, releasing that pressure a little bit. But when Yellowstone blows, it's gonna be devastating, But it's not blown yet, so we have time. So hopefully we'll get in this. I just wanted to give an idea of Solon's ancestors and what they went through, and after this Thera happened, that event, about hundreds of years went by, and then they went into a dark age. So up until Solon's time, the Greeks were coming out of a dark age and then starting off and having to start cities all over again. And I think that dark age was another time where the Atlantis definitely took, we lost Atlantis. Those two events were the final things that made us lose Atlantis. And then, but Solon, he was able to dig it out. He got the information back. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with Solon in the next video I do. So see you next time, and have a good day.